and today we are going to listen to an industry speaker, a person from industry who is an entrepreneur, who is a big employer, who is an innovator and founder. We are going to listen first today to Dr. Aragyaswamy Velumani, who is the founder, creator, managing director, chairman of ThyroCare.
Thank you and good morning. Good morning to all those who have come from every part of the country, not coming from, listening from. And it's very exciting to address an audience of 3,000 without moving out of my quarantine room. I call it as a quarantine room because I haven't gone out of this room, not because I have some symptoms, because I am sitting in the cockpit and running the COVID testing. We have done so far 20,000 COVID testing within a short span of 35 days. And that needs enormous focus because it's new to us. The virus is new to us. The disaster is very new to all leaders, be it country leaders, state leaders, or company leaders. It has been such a testing time for testing people also, because whom to test, when to test, what is false positive, what is meaning of negative, what to do with positive, what to do with the family members, what to do with the candidate. Oh no, everybody is learning, and science is science, technology is technology, administration is administration, and in such a situation the administrators take control of science and technology also. So that's too long to tell. And let me give you some briefing about COVID itself, because I've been sitting in a driver's seat and seeing the landscape of how testing, technology, disease, all are facing such a severe stress. So as all of you know, the virus is almost 120 days old, and it has been around, and it all started in China, and it looked like China will burst out and China will collapse. China will only collapse, not other countries, because first month trend said nowhere else, and all fatalities are only in China. But then China appears to have escaped from it. The entire China, with the world's largest population of 150 crores, doesn't seem to be truly having the death rate something alarming. It moved to the Western world much faster than even it comes to India. And in Western world, it has played a very big havoc. And it has come to India, and India also reacted as it should be reacted, because we didn't want to see an Italy in India, we didn't want to see a London in India. So a lot of knee-jerk reactions, lockdown 1, lockdown 2, lockdown 3, and all this have added a lot of stress to livelihood for a poor India, livelihood challenges for migrants of the country. So what is that lessons we have learned in this last 120 days about this monster? One thing is simple: you just can't escape from it. You can delay, dilute the calamity. You can't escape from the calamity. So the very purpose of lockdown was to ensure that all in a family doesn't fall sick at a time, all in a village doesn't fall sick at a time, and all in a city will fall sick at a time, because we don't have medical supporting facilities to take care of huge crowd. So lockdown was essential. First lockdown was wonderful. It controlled, and the numbers are low, numbers were low, numbers still are low. And a few learnings I had personally learned. I don't know whether country has learned, or the bureaucrats have learned, or the decision-making authorities have learned. But what as a scientist I have learned, I will tell you, it's my view, my scientist come business acumen says. In China, within 1 month, I found 90% of the people were dead were above the age of 60. Only 10% of the people were below the age of 60. And in India, mean age was 28, is 28. And I knew that India will not have that problem what even China had. China's mean age was 48. 38. India's mean age is 28. So we have a clear advantage of 10 years. That's a huge advantage. So I was knowing that India will have less problems. But then, the Western world has another problem. If India is 28, if China is 38, Western world has got 48 mean age. In other words, number of people having above the age of 65 in Western world is 18%. In India, it is only 6%. So we are relatively safe. So if you look at the lockdown and its impact, the positive man thinks, oh, in India, we have lost only three deaths per million. In UK, it is 250 deaths per million. In US, it is 150 deaths per million. In India, we have only 2 or 3 per million. So this is supposed to be seen from deaths point of view. Infection point of view depends upon how you detect, how you count, how much do you do testing. All those things will decide. I don't think we need to bother much about number of infected for a 1.35 billion. This much infected is too little. Even infected per million, India is very low, and death per million in India is very low. Numbers won't tell a lie, and you see the number, you need to see how you need to look at. If you look at worldwide, 2.5 lakh people have died, it's a calamity. You will get completely scared. But if you look at it, nowhere in the world people have died more than 0.05%. That means 99.95% are safe. That means that's positive side of looking at it. Yes, there is a calamity. We need to take care. We need to follow all the procedures recommended by every regulatory authority because it is after all life. But panicking doesn't help. In panic, you can't take decision. The bigger mistakes are done when it is panicked. And leaders should not get panicked. Leaders should look things positive. Leaders should take care of the worst, but still think from the positive side, what is the outcome. So the question may arise, is India safe? Answer is, it is relatively safe. Will that India will not lose number of people? Yes, it will lose, but it will be lesser. Worldwide, if 300 per million are dying, India will maximum lose 30 per million. 1/10 of the calamity is already very well controlled. To that extent, remaining 9/10 we have escaped. Only 1/10 is our calamity. So the question may arise, what advantage India has got compared to the rest of the world to enjoy this? I think people said it is a disease which will not look anything rich, poor. It will not think about religion. It will not think about country, male, female, anything. But it looks like it is a disease which looks after two things. One is the age, another is the immunity. Immunity of a person to withstand a disease is very important. All of us were born with a very negligible immunity, and as soon as we were born, we got attacked by so many pathogens living around. Within 5 years, we got 90% immunity for many things, and within 10 years, we got 99% of the immunity. Now, this is known as immunity, which gets developed in the body in the very early age of the life. So if you look at it, the characteristics of this virus across the globe, number one, the rich are attacked more, poor are attacked less, because the high GDP countries have lost 100 plus numbers per million, and low GDP countries have lost 10 minus, that is less than 10 deaths per million. So there is a clear agenda of this virus to kill the rich, not the poor. But does it know the per capita income? It does not know. Then how more rich are dying? I think we are all fortunate to have, I used to hear when I was 20 years of age that India is 90% of the people in India are living in rural villages. unhygienic, no medical facilities, highest level of infant mortality. Truth, we had this problem. Because we had this problem, our body has seen every pathogen and our body has developed adequate immunity. Whereas Western world, they all were rich. Rich means you isolate yourself from every pathogen from the day of birth, and your body has not seen a pathogen. Very little pathogens Western world has seen, the richer countries have seen. India has seen every worst pathogen. That too, rural India has seen much worse situations. So, fortunately, we were poor. Fortunately, poor means we had a poor environment and higher immunity, and today it is helping. When the virus is making its visit in Western world, they collapse. In India, we are not collapsing. That's number one. So the poor countries are spared. Richer countries are more attacked because poor countries have better immunity. Richer countries have lesser immunity. Other than that, we had a tuberculosis burden across the country. Many tropical countries are countries on the equator and high temperature countries, and all of them had tuberculosis burden. And the Western world felt that tuberculosis is only for poor countries, and they did not follow the BCG regime. India very meticulously implemented the BCG regime. Malaria was also another problem of tropical countries. We don't know it is all BCG or all malaria or both together along with immunity, and all three together along with the mean age, all four probably has bailed out India from this disaster. And I very confidently tell bailed out because in spite of we having a parallel run along with US, though Mumbai appeared to have too high death rate, it is nothing compared to what New York is undergoing. So I want the listening audience to feel safe, secured, though I would advise all of them to be more careful than what you have been, but need not be more panicked. It is all appearing to be safe. So as I said, India also will lose people for a country of 1.35 billion. Even if we lose 10 or 20 per million, it is too big number. So the big question the government does not know, the medical community does not know, and no one knows is whether the peak is over or not. I believe for India, peak is not over. We have delayed the peak. We have had 3 lockdowns, so the peak will come only on all lockdowns are taken out. I hope we have enough of medical infrastructure to handle the number of people. I want all of you to understand 90% of the people who got exposed do not have or did not exhibit any symptoms. Their body had a highest level of immunity and they have managed it without even their own knowledge. Mind you, 90% of the exposed. In the remaining 10%, 90% of the ones who got infected only had very mild symptoms for 3 days, 5 days, 7 days, 10 days, and they did not go to hospital. Only 10% went to hospital. Of the people who have entered into hospital with severe health conditions, 5% only have died, remaining 95% have come back. So have confidence, think positive, so that you can at least work peacefully. If you are scared, jo dar gaya, wo mar gaya. So this is some message I want to keep regarding COVID. So that is in short about COVID as a calamity. Let us hope things will come back to normalcy. And I also want all of you to be motivated. I have been telling in every webinar. I want to tell here also. There was a GDP growth difference between the Western world and the Asian giants, that is we and China. There was around 2% difference. So that means these two countries were growing 2% faster than the rest of the world. Because of this COVID, this 2% might become 3 or 4% difference, which means even if we grow 4% only, the developed countries may grow 0% or even -1%, because the calamity has hit the Western world. will be hitting the Western world, because the Western world is old population, and old population cannot become young population. So this is one advantage the country India and China have got. Both of them will move very fast. Some of the calculations said India will become a superpower in 2050 based upon pre-COVID GDP changes. Let me tell you, post-COVID GDP changes will make sure India will be a superpower even by 2040, 10 years lesser than what was the target. Only thing is, we need to put in all our politics in place, all our social reforms in place, the mindset that, somebody let them work, let me relax, all need to go. I want all of you to understand Japan has become a much biggest of all in terms of top 5. They are present only because they were hit by Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombs, nuclear bombs, 65 years back. Which means whenever you are grounded, you get up and move, disciplined, move, hard work, move fast, and you achieve. We are also hit. The world is hit. The world will come back, get back, and India was less hit. So there is a likelihood we are going to have advantages. So this is my communication to motivate, whether it is students, teaching community, or entrepreneurs, startups, or investing community. And I wish India, Mera Bharat Mahan, a very long journey. I think this is about COVID, and I didn't tell about me. I am from Coimbatore, periphery of Coimbatore, a small village called Appanaikanbatti, and was not easy to get educated without money, except that the government schools and the government hostels and government support. And I was a beneficiary of all benevolent chief ministers of Tamil Nadu, and had a graduation in chemistry, maths, physics, and unfortunately Coimbatore did not give me a job. Fortunately, Coimbatore did not give me a job, and I had to leave Coimbatore in 1982, August 18, landed in Mumbai VT railway station, the earliest known migrant for the next generation. And I landed at 4 a.m. S9 coach, berth number 41, with 500 rupees in my pocket. And I was fortunate to get a job in Baba Atomic Research Center, the most premium research institute. I thought BSc was full stop, but then, God was great. I was given an opportunity to do MSc and PhD in thyroid biochemistry. That is how I became a thyroid man. And then I am from Coimbatore. Coimbatore is having some entrepreneurial soil. I ventured into business, leaving government job. Did a wonderful journey, never borrowed personally, never had a borrowing. Because I was unemployed because of lack of experience, I have today employed 8,000 freshers in my organization. We are present in 10 countries and 10,000 towns. In every pin code, we are present in India. And we do roughly around 450 crores of turnover. And I went for an IPO in 2016 April. And we got 75 times oversubscribed and listed in the stock exchange. So this is the story of a man from a small village who has majestically entered into national stock exchange. And I must tell you what made me very powerful. Some people ask me, sir, what is the main reason for your success? And I always tell them, what is the most important organ in your body? There are not less than 6, 7. Without brain, nothing functions. Without heart, everything is dead. Without lungs, heart will dry. Without liver, nothing will happen. Without kidney, nothing will be cleared. So there are vital things even in my success. Number one was poverty. I was born poor. I am very proud to tell I was born in a village, because people who are born in villages have more power, more ability, more stamina, more aggression, and least expectation, least disappointed they will ever become, because they didn't have anything to truly dream upon. So success in life is delta. Delta is equal to x2 minus x1, and x2 is where you are today. x1 was where you were that day. For a poor man from a village, x1 was 0. There is no downside for 0, and I enjoyed that comfort. Number 1 is poverty. Poverty gives you stamina because poor people have more stamina. Rich people don't have stamina. If a Bombay brought up 100 boys are told to walk to Patna, they will not even walk more than 10 kilometers. The boys from Bihar, UP, Jharkhand, Odisha have walked back hundreds of kilometers because they were born poor. So the born poor had higher stamina. I was astonished to see some people carrying their mother and walking hundreds of kilometers. Oh, it's a very new education. So poor people have higher stamina. Poor people have frugality. Frugality is not to spend beyond your means. My mother was most frugal lady I could ever imagine because without an income with 2 buffaloes, giving milk 10 liters a day, 70 liters a week, 70 rupees a week, she never borrowed, and she made sure all her children are graduates in Madras University and postgraduates in Mumbai University. That is an epitome of frugality, and I enjoyed every part of it. And today I am a very rich man. I must tell you, I live frugal even today. Living frugal when you are poor is no option. Living frugal when you are rich is great option. So poverty, stamina, frugality, and focus. Focus is very important. Many of you must be wondering, I think this is a faculty or this is the student community. Let me teach you what actually is focus. You will not be able to sleep tonight if you understand it correctly. If a child sits with a paper and pen and writes 10 pages without getting up from his chair, that means he has focus. If somebody can put a newspaper on the table, read from first page to last page for 1 full hour, he has focus. If somebody can put the bedsheet back in place, newspaper back in place, he has focus. If somebody does not need the parents to close the Colgate or any of the routine used materials, cap back in place, that means they have got higher focus. Focus gives you power. I am very powerful man only because I have focused adequately and learned. I was a Madrasi. You will not see too many Madrasis speaking Hindi, Marathi, Gujarati, and I can speak in a stage all these 3 languages also only because I focused to learn. A mathematician running a medical business is not possible. And a boy who was from village smallest sitting in Mumbai and running business is not that simple. Guys, I am not proclaiming that I am a Superman. I'm only telling focus can make you a Superman. Please focus. And there are a lot of things associated with that. And I want to give the moderator an option to ask me questions either directly from his mind or from the questions which that are in the audience who have asked. You can now open it. Okay, no, I am only telling you now I am free to answer questions.
Yes,
and if there are
yes,
no
sir.
questions, I will be keep on talking as long as you want.
No, you please continue, sir. Right now, no, it's always been, no, there was one question. I thought I will put it to the end,
Right.
but since you're asking, let me ask, no.
Yeah.
As an educator, they were asking, no, if I am living in city or if I am living in rural, so how should I manage post-COVID? No, is there any difference in way in which we should live? Or is there any, because they will have to guide students also. There are a group of people, those who are living only in rural, how they will tackle, and how a urban teacher and students will tackle. Any inputs on that, sir?
Yeah. Okay, I will answer them. There won't be anything known as coming back to normalcy for any industry, even for any relationship, either seller buyer, students and teachers, employer and employee, even political leader and follower. Nothing will come back to the pre-COVID normalcy, but everything will create a new normal. The new normal will be very different from old normal, and all of us will get used to the new normal. So this is to explain overall in all industries, in all over the world, in all over the space of our dwelling, happiness, everything will be totally different. Number one. Number two, I want all of you to understand, you may be very keen to know only about education, but I want to tell you about what and all is going to happen in the world in the post-COVID era. The number of companies running and number of products they make, a number of categories of business they do, it's too many, and it's very difficult to talk individually for any particular industry. But all industries put together, I create 10 sectors, potentially 10 sectors. Every company will fall in one of those sectors. And in these 10 sectors, which are the 3 best surging, enjoying industries, which will be the 3 worst suffering industries, I will narrate. The best enjoying industry of all will be healthcare, because the fear of life has suddenly come, and the fear of life has abandoned the livelihood also. So that means there is a Hindi movie called Tappad, and if you guys have great time, please see that movie. One Tappad by one husband to one wife has changed the entire movie complexion post Tappad. How people reacted to that Tappad is similar to how people will react to this COVID Tappad. So the healthcare industry will be the highest priority, and even government who spends 2.5-3% of GDP for healthcare might go to double digit, because ultimately it is the health which keeps the country live and the livelihood live. So people will be, there will be more hospitals and more doctors and more nurses and more facilities and more tests done, more monitoring done. So this is going to be a wonderful industry, not only in India, all over the world. By the way, I want all of you to understand, India has been spending only 2.5% GDP for healthcare, whereas US was spending 17% GDP. 2.5% in a small economy and 17% in a big economy. You can understand how the Western world was protected by money, and India was exposed without money, and that is the luxury which has helped us to come out of this COVID with least damage. I won't say we have come out, we are yet to come out, but it appears that we are safe. So the first industry is healthcare. The second industry is wellness, fitness, nutrition. Wellness is you want to monitor, do you have adequate immunity? Do you have adequate health? Is your liver normal? Is your kidney normal? Is your metabolic factors normal? So this is wellness. Wellness means it is not sickness. Sickness is what is hospital all about. Wellness is very different domain. So wellness, fitness, I think people have forgotten about body and started eating, drinking recklessly, thinking that partying is all life, and obesity all have set in, fitness has gone down. Many people would not be able to bend down and touch their feet 10 times in a stretch, nor they can do Surya Namaskar. So it's gone. Fitness has to be, people were thinking that fitness means going to gym in a car. That is only to impress the neighbor. Fitness is nothing but doing 20 Surya Namaskars in your own living room, bedroom, and seeing yourself fit. Fitness is strengthen muscles, flexibility of joints, and stamina to walk or run, and the energy to do work for hours in a day. So this is 4 things will get a lot of attention. The finally most important is nutrition, because we were eating anything what is tasty to tongue. What is good to tongue is bad to body. We now need to see what is good for body. It may not be tasty, so people will have to identify and tell what nutrition will keep your body in shape, body fit, body healthy. So nutrition will play a big role. So I have said second industry is wellness, fitness, and nutrition. Third industry is personal hygiene, what you wear. Now you will find in a showroom a matching mask with every lady's dress and every man's dress. To that extent, the hygiene, personal hygiene, the lotions, the creams, the kind of facilities will facilitate you to avoid infection. The door knobs will change, the lift buttons will change, the living style of eating style in a restaurant will change, all will change. So personal hygiene and hygienic products is the third most surging industry. So these three, one side. The other side, the worst hit is airline industry. You can see in Singapore airport, or see in Hong Kong airport, or in Atlanta airport, you will have not less than 200, 300 flights standing for the last 40 days. Nothing is moving. How long it will take for all the flight to take to the air? Maybe 4 years, maybe 8 years, or may never be. So that industry is in a very, very severe soup. The second worst hit is the travel tourism. That means Kashmir was Kashmir only because of tourism. Goa is Goa only because of tourism. So is Bangkok or Malaysia or Singapore or Mauritius or European destinations or US destinations. All will have a very big challenge to resume back to their business. The third will be the banquet halls available all over the country in number of hotels runs, and the marriage halls on the country runs into hundreds of thousands. All of them were engaging every night 500 to 1,000 capacity. And this was a huge economy of providing jobs in terms of food, cocktails, everything. All of them will take too long time to come back. And even if they come back, don't now imagine there will be 3,000 people sitting in Codicia Hall and listening to ITCAT's program as a physical seminars. So all will change. Now I come back to your industry, specifically education industry. How I visualize is, I must tell here the power of IT is the highest in this last 60 days demonstrated. The medium through which people chat is Zoom chat. Its shares have hit to the roof. And there are many such companies which have hit to the roof, including the Baiju learning app, which has hit to the roof. So which all very clearly tells digital way of learning is going to be a larger educational domain than the brick and mortar model, which has been serving for the last 100 years. Government schools will find it extremely difficult to get attention of students. Now private, which have a better looking infrastructure, but probably not having better delivery systems. But then since they were not government, since there was a paucity of good schools, all could enjoy probably a small premium to big premium. So all will have challenges because the convention has been disrupted. So what is likely? Likely is more of aerial education, less of infrastructure-based education, and all education will 80% be on digital. They want good teachers, they want good videos, they want everything to be given in such a way that they feel that they got a quality education. But brick and mortar still will continue. A medical college cannot continue to do an online education. It has to show the patient how the kidney looks like in a patient, which cannot be truly done digitally, though a lot of digital also can be taught. Finally, he has to come. So is a physics experiment, so is a chemistry experiment cannot be conducted there. He has to have an expertise. So I have a reason to believe 20% of the brick and mortar system will be utilized for education, 80% will be on air. And that allows the schools to recruit more students, because every student does not require 6 days in a week, 2 days in a week, or 4 days in a month. So accordingly, they can schedule and take more students. More students means you don't need that much fees. And when you take less fees, fees will not be a limitation. So education will be more used, more will become graduates, more will become postgraduates. I don't see there is a distress for the industry, though there will be disruption for the operators who don't understand how to adapt fast. The one who adapt fast will be the topmost, and the ones who don't understand and adopt fast will be behind, and the ones who fail to completely understand will be eliminated. Sorry about me being blunt. I always talk truth as it looks to my eyes. And the truth industry people will know, because you know your industry, you know your industry's pains and pleasures pre-COVID, and you know what will likely to pains to vanish and what pleasures also might vanish, and what are the new pleasures, new pains you have to assess and understand and react and adapt. Is there any next question I can answer to
Yes, sir. Now there was one question. Now, when we are talking about sending our kids, from at least till the 10-year-old, 5 to 10-year-old. Now, how do we deal post-COVID? No, somebody is telling, no, I'm really worried to send my kid to school. Should we really worry for the kid? I'm not talking about the college or the adults or adolescents. I'm only that question was specific to kids less than 10 years old.
It's a very sensitive question, and I may not be able to clearly guide on this particular question except telling some facts. The fact is, until age of 5, the child's immunity is still not developed fully, and it goes to age of 10 to have the matured immune system. So any child above 10 and less than 40 years of age is the robust immunity. You can experiment in any way. People less than 10 years of age, I wonder, is that safe enough to allow to mingle with every child? But that is not only for education. The childhood itself is going to be robbed, because the child cannot go and play anywhere, the child cannot be taken anywhere else. So these are all some challenges. If the COVID pain, COVID's more of stigma, this is more of stigma today. The disease doesn't kill, the stigma kills. The livelihood lost, the migrants walking all was thinking that I should escape from this deadly bimari which is there in the metros, and that has forced him to walk. So if you ask me, children are both najuk hai. I won't be able to very confidently guide there. Wait for some more time. Let us learn about this virus some more. But let me honestly tell you, the child is learning very fast. Until the age of 20, every boy, every child, whether he is in the school or not in the school, his brain starts looking for knowledge. Please provide knowledge to the child. Online or offline is a matter of something which we can decide. In my personal opinion, lot of education can be done offline, and if there is some online, and if some offline, that is education in a school has to be done, it can be reduced by number of hours, or it can be reduced by number of days, so that fair care can be taken for the child to not to get into the fury of this particular pandemic.
Okay, sir. Good, sir. I think you answered it right. So there is another question. Is there any specific areas or technologies that to be concentrated specific to healthcare system or specific to the situation by the students of engineering or students of science? Is there any area of focus that will come in? Or is there any startup or entrepreneurial opportunities will become more because of this COVID in certain areas? Is there any specific areas that you would like to highlight upon?
I am little different kind of thinking is mine. And because I am born in a village, some of my thought process have been based upon village economy. In my village, people will find suddenly the tomato was selling at 100 rupees per kilo. So all villages in my locality and all farmers in that villages will cultivate only coconut. And within 90 days, what was sold for 100 rupees per kilogram will come to 3 rupees per kilogram. Now, COVID also is going to pose a similar one, because everything in COVID is costly. The material cost is only 10 rupees. The material is sold only at 300 rupees. So all people have invested all their resources in solving the problem, and all will have too much produce, too high excess, and there may not be a consumption, and there will be a very big disaster. So don't ever look at that place. All should not look at one place. This is my advice. Having
Okay.
said that, every industry has different domains where you can explore and experiment and enjoy. And I must tell you here, there is a song again in Tamil, and the Tamil song I will translate in English and tell you. There are only two kinds of people: one who sees a stone, another who sees a god. And similarly, whenever a disaster comes, there are only two kinds of people: one who sees the pains, another who sees the pleasures. One who sees the opportunity, other who sees this as a challenge. So I want all in the engineering college, MBA college, and all who are budding right from an age of 10 to 20, not to be in a hurry. You need not become a billionaire before you become son-in-law. You must have some patience. You learn knowledge, acquire knowledge, and business is not a 100-meter dash. It is a marathon race. And be prepared. How fast you run your first lap is not going to decide how you end your marathon race. So have patience, have knowledge, have focus, have frugality, have a plan, and approach life without fear.
Thanks, sir. I think you answered all the questions, because more of the questions in the chat window are almost similar. I picked up only few things so that you will answer. But at the same time, no, your session is unlike our typical technology session and more on learning. I think this is a big eye opener for the entire community of educators, because it is not just this 3,500 educators. It is into at least 100 students, those who will look for advices and inputs from the teachers. So with that, I think thank you really from the bottom of our heart, from ICT Academy and the teachers, for giving such wonderful insights. So
Thank
may I
you.
request your final I would not say summary, your final some top few important points for educators, what they should do to the students, or what is their advice to the students?
I don't want to give specifically for educators. I want to give thinking that all of them are parents,
Also parents, yeah.
because for the students also they are parents. So I look at it from the parents' point of view. I think two things most important in life: one is health and another is wealth, in that order, not in the reverse order. The health is nothing but immunity, the body to face any pathogen without any pain to the body is known as health, not getting admitted in hospital and coming back. And this immunity is something which is given by parents to the children, not borrowed from the shop. Now, plenty of the time, I must tell here a few points, because these teachers should teach to that parents who come with obnoxious perceptions about life. My grandmother had 8 children. My mother had 5 children. My wife had 2 children. My children may not have more than 1 child. With 5 children in that village, where the doctor was 7 kilometers away and the doctor's timings was not known, and there was no transport to go to the doctor, and 5 children, one of us will have COVID kind of symptom every other day. And my mother never took us to the hospital. Fortunately, she was poor. Because he never took us to the hospital, all diseases, all disorders, diarrhea to urinary tract infection to every kind of thing, we have managed using our in-body resources, not outside. So that is immunity. Today, I find the mothers of the modern day children, they start observing a temperature at morning 7 o'clock. Then they don't go to office, they take a leave, because temperature according to them is something very, very worrying. They will see temperature from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. 5 times. And 10 a.m. they will go to a doctor, and doctor will tell only 4 hours you have fever, let us wait for 2 days. No, doctor, I have only 1 child, I can't take risk, please give whatever injection necessary. And doctor gives multiple antibiotics to take care of the mother's worry. That means the immunity is killed. Trust me, body has enough power to withstand all except the extreme cases. And extreme cases you can admit in the hospital and treat. And you should not get into very worrying, very fast medical remedies. That is immunity, and I am keen that parents understand it correctly, because for a child, immunity can be given only by the parents. The second thing is frugality, that is wealth. Wealth is not how much money you make. Wealth is nothing but what is the fraction of money you made, you spend. And frugality is very important. My mother was highly frugal. I am highly frugal. My children are highly frugal. And the frugality, once it is there, you don't need a big bank balance, and you can live your life happily. So the two advices I want to leave the audience is, one is frugality. First is immunity, another is frugality, because life first, health first, and wealth next. So first is immunity, next is frugality. Both cannot be taught by the neighbor. You have to teach to your children. Thank you very much. I enjoyed talking, and wish you all
Thank you,
great day.
thank you very much, sir. Thanks a lot. I think you are the first speaker to really focus have as health being first priority, and next is the wealth. I think that's the key message. And your entire, I think if we have to put a topic to the session, health first by Dr. Velumani is the session. So thank you very much, Dr. Velumani, for spending your entire 1 hour with us and giving these wonderful insights to the educators. Thanks a lot on behalf of the entire participants and the ICT Academy.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.